Facebook Live audience, this is Tom Dean announcing here today. I'm the VP of Marketing for Zondervan, a division of HarperCollins, and we have a rock legend in the studio with us today. It is really such a great professional honor to be here with Jonathan Cain of the band Journey, and his book, Don't Stop Believin', which you might have recognized that tune. That is releasing today worldwide, and I'm just going to read from the back cover of the book real quick before we get started. From one of the greatest bands in history comes a reminder to never give up hope. Jonathan Cain of the iconic supergroup Journey reached a level of success that few musicians can even imagine, but his road to fame and to the faith it took to make it through wasn't always easy. In his book, Don't Stop Believin', Jonathan takes us behind the stage of one of the most remarkable stories in American music. He writes a dreamlike account of how the music came to be, of band friendships lost and found, the mixed blessings of unrelenting fame, and the nights when the spotlight was bright but his spirit was dark. The book has two different color photo inserts, and obviously, previously, many untold stories of Cain's more than 3 decades with Journey. This book is a testament to the power of music and the beauty of hope. So welcome live audience, and welcome Jonathan.
Thank you. Good to be here with you all, yeah.
So John, I'm just going to jump right in as people are joining us. 3 decades with Journey, more than 3 decades, right?
Yes, sir. 37 years.
37
actually.
years.
Yeah.
I think it might be really fitting for us to start. The first question is this song and the title of your book, Don't Stop Believin'. It spans, generations. In fact, I remember when we came up with the subtitle, we were in Nashville. I was with you. We had just done a photo shoot. We were standing outside of some railroad tracks, and you came up with the subtitle, The Man, the Band, and the Song That Inspired Generations. And
Amen.
That's truly what this song has been. It's been an inspiration to generations. And I think it's fitting to start with, tell us how this song came to be.
I was in San Francisco finishing the Escape album, and Steve asked me if I had anything, that I had written for the last song to be recorded. And I went back and looked in my spiral notebook, and I remembered I had written down something my father had said years ago, back in the 70s. It's probably 5 years before, when I was struggling in Hollywood, interestingly enough. And I needed a loan, and I asked him if I should just give up the dream and come home to Chicago. And he said, "Son, stay where you are and don't stop believing." And there it was. I was staring at it, and I realized that it sounded like a Journey song. It looked like a Journey song. And I just needed to create a chorus and bring it in to rehearsal. That simple. And so I did. I wrote the chorus, brought it into rehearsal, and we wrote the rest of the song that day, wrote the rest of the lyrics the next day. We recorded it on the Escape album probably 2 weeks later, and it was the first track on a mega million seller Escape album.
Right.
Pretty amazing, yeah.
But there was that 4-year period, right?
There was that period of patience. I didn't know what the song meant. I kept it with me because it was almost like a prayer, I would say, when things didn't look so good. And I would look at that and feel better. Like Dad said, don't stop believing. I won't stop, And my father was very prophetic, very much a part of my musical desire, drive, and determination to reach for something greater. And my he was always say, it's a stepping stone to something greater. That was his line to me. So
yeah, that's good. One of the questions that's come in already on the Facebook Live feed from Kelly Moore, she says, at what age did you realize you wanted to pursue music? And I think that's a good question to ask here early on, because your music was such a part of your life from very early on. But why don't you share how your dad impacted that?
Yes. My father recognized this music sort of gift that I had at an early age. I was singing all the songs of the hit parade, and I could remembered all the lyrics of the Goofy songs back in the day, Jambalaya and Mambo Italiano and all these crazy '50s songs, and so he recognized that musical gift. And after a tragic event in my life happened at 8 years old, he gave me music lessons and shifted me from the tragedy to a newfound desire, and that was to learn music. And I started out with this little accordion because I was so small I couldn't put my hands around the guitar at that point. They didn't have little guitars back in those days, so
right.
There I'm stuck with an accordion, and it fit perfect. And I learned all these Italian songs, and so the delicatessen owner, we lived above a deli, heard me practicing Louis, and he said, "When you have 10 songs, come down and perform a concert for the boys. I'll close the store down." So little did I know that was a real concert coming up. I practiced. I told him I was ready. So the big Friday night came, and I went down there in my little folding chair and played for about 25 old Italian guys with their Perotti cigars and their Chianti. Wine was flowing. There was smoke everywhere. They're laughing and singing. The atmosphere changed. I lit these people up. I realized that it was the power of these songs, and that I was communicating. I was having musical conversations with them, reminding them of their homeland, Italy. And so my father came home that night, and he said, "How did it go, son?" And I said to him, "Remember I told you I wanted to be a priest, Dad? I changed my mind. I want to be a musician." That was amazing. I want to keep doing this for the rest of my life. I knew there and then, after that little concert in the deli, that I was wanting to be a musician.
That's fantastic. So, you had this initial dream growing up in a Catholic family. You attended a Catholic school. You really thought that the priesthood is where you were going to go. And
I sure did. I sure did. And my dad shifted me to music. And then my mom told me I couldn't have a wife, and that was a deal breaker. I don't know if I could.
Okay.
I had a couple of girlfriends. I was only 8, I know, but I was sweet on a couple of girls. And that was like, well, John, you can't have girlfriends when you're a priest. I'm like, oh, okay. I better be a musician.
Right.
And, the other thing was my teacher had such an influence over me. He was a really cool young guy. So I had a very hip kind of accordion teacher who had all these gigs downtown, and he smelled good. He always had a tuxedo ready to go and, whisking off to his gig in the city. And I thought, what a glamorous life this guy lives, I want to do this, so.
That's great.
Yeah.
So another Facebook Live question, how long did it take you to write the memoir? This is from Catherine Adams, and how long have you been wanting to write it? And I know this answer, so that's why I wanted to ask it, because it's a good question.
I said about writing it about 8 years ago, and getting all the details down, chronologically going through it in my life, but I rewrote it. After the Hall of Fame, the whole thing kind of got changed, because the Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony changed everything for me in my mind, and I knew how I was going to write it. So I borrowed bits of different things that I had written and went about it constructing it differently. So, probably in the last, year, things changed dramatically, but a lot of the detail and stuff came from, recollecting and getting my dates right.
So maybe if this would be a good time to just take a second and read that opening 2 pages from the book, because
this would be.
You've done a really nice job of setting up the book by starting with that.
Well, it's funny. I had several different introductions to this book, and I couldn't seem to land any of them that, I wanted to draw the reader in, especially the Journey fan. I wanted to give them something special, and there wasn't anything more special than this situation here, standing with my bandmates on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame stage at Barclays Center in New Jersey. I'm not surprised to be standing on the stage with these guys, but I'm grateful. Sometimes hard work can turn into a blessing like tonight. The toughest part is not letting the experience turn into pride. Past and present members of Journey stand front and center at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. I'm proud to be surrounded by my brothers, my fans, and my family. We are joining a formidable list of artists, bands like Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Aerosmith, and Fleetwood Mac. Icons such as Elvis Presley, Bob Dylan, Aretha Franklin, Bruce Springsteen, and Chuck Berry. They put all their own talents and tales into songs for generations. A ceremony like this can easily be forgotten, but the music that has been created will inspire listeners decades from now. Our bandmates give their speeches, with Neil Sean leading the way, followed by Ainsley Dunbar, Greg Rowley, Steve Smith, and Ross Valerie. My turn to say thanks comes second to last, with Steve Perry putting the final exclamation on our triumph. It's the first time he's been on stage with us since 1991. It's good to see my friend. Raising the award, like the Commissioner's Trophy or the Vince Lombardi Trophy as I approach the microphone, I give a shout out to the Cubs for winning the World Series. Then I begin by acknowledging the reason I'm up here. I'd like to begin by thanking my father and mother for believing in me from the time I was 8 years old and after. Dad later said to me, "Son, don't stop believing," in a phone call back in the late 70s. He's gone now. I miss you, Dad, and I love you. For the next 3 minutes, I give the briefest and palest summary of my own journey, of how in the world I managed to be up here in the first place. There are dozens of stories for every person mentioned, hundreds of songs for each section of time, thousands of miles spent traveling. Yet, through all of them, there are two constants who have been in my life from the very beginning, my two fathers. The first, who was my first and greatest hero, and the second, who never gave up on me. And thanks to you, Lord, for keeping your guiding hand on us all those years. This honor was truly worth the wait. I passed the trophy to Steve Perry, smiling as we embraced one another, finding myself once again standing on stage behind the singer with that one-of-a-kind voice and listening to his genuine words of thanks. I am moved to see how God works in our lives. For a moment I blink and I remember the 3-year-old boy entranced by his grandfather's fiddle. Then I hear Steve saying, "Thank you so much, John, for all the songs that we've written together." It's impossible to fathom the incredible journey between that fiddle and the Hall of Fame, all those years spent under God's guiding hand. It's a story about patience, persistence, and the pursuit of something majestic. It's one I'm honored to be able to share.
That's fantastic. And it is the first memoir from anybody in the group, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
That's what really, I think, again, adds such a special flavor to it, is none of
Well,
the
I was
other-
editor of my newspaper in high school.
Well, there you go.
So, I've always had sort of a flair for the journalism side of things, and this was, my story and journey being 37 years of
Right.
my life. I certainly don't want people to think this is an official journey book by any stroke. It is my journey to journey.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Of all the songs that you composed with Steve Perry, do you have, outside of Don't Stop Believing, do you have, another one or two that rises to the top of your favorites?
Yeah, I would have to say Open Arms really hits the top for me. It was probably our biggest hit on the radio back in the 80s. And it was a song that he believed in. I brought it to him nearly finished, and yet he put his own self into it and helped me with the lyrics and stood by it, for a long time, and really an amazing vocal performance and passion from Steve on that one.
How, because of your time in the music business, how has it changed, or how have you, seen it change over the 37 years that you've been involved, from 1978 on?
The business, yeah. The business has changed. The record companies, due to the fact that radio is very corporate now and not especially privately owned. There's very few private radio stations. The disc jockeys and the relationships between the bands have diminished some, and we don't have that same camaraderie, the sort of team spirit that we had in the day. I miss the days when, you would be picked up by the record company, take you to the radio station, play your song, go to the concert arena, and sell 100,000 albums a week.
Yeah, right.
Those are pretty amazing days. Yeah. We had to work for those relationships, but those relationships were what forged the brand of Journey, and it took that army to make Journey what it was. And I think today it's kind of gotten more internet driven. We're being attacked by this thing called streaming. The lack
Sure.
of ownership now in music listeners. They necessarily don't want to buy a physical product. They'd rather just stream it. They go on Spotify and all these different websites and just get it for $9.99 a month. Millions of songs. That was unheard of.
Right.
And back
Right.
in the day, we couldn't wait to get in line to buy the next Beatles album.
Sure.
I can remember being excited about that next Beach Boys record coming out with Good Vibrations. I heard it on the radio. I had to have it.
Right.
But it wasn't in yet, and you had to wait. And then once you got it in your hands, you'd open up that album jacket and you'd read every liner note. You'd play those discs over and over again, and it was a whole process.
Right.
It was a relationship with the band's product, with their vision for where they were going, and you were like into it. It was just a physically comforting feeling to own some music that had been created by one of your favorite bands. And today it just seems so impersonal, and I hope that the young bands today get half the attention that we got, the way they took care of us. And we made records that weren't always hits, and they stayed with us,
Sure.
And I sat there at the Rose Garden when we received our Diamond Award, which is a 10 million seller. And I was standing around with all these 10 million seller artists. We had Metallica, Kenny G, Kenny Rogers, Boston, and we were standing in this group of eclectic mix
Sure.
of guys. And I said, what we all have in common? We all made a clunker record.
Yeah, right.
And those record companies stood by us.
That's great.
And so that nurturing process, I hope some of it's left. I can't speak for today's music. And, there's a few bands out there I really admire. There's a few writers out there that I'm following closely and hoping that they can continue the great songwriting and the great music that they're putting forth.
When you were, John, writing, let's say back in the early 80s, and you were composing some of these mega hits, what was your inspiration? Was there another artist? Was there something that you were reading? I mean,
Well,
obviously your dad gave you several ideas.
Yeah, my
amazingly.
dad, of course, we wanted to make my dad proud, but I think it was the Journey fans. Once I sat in a crowd watching Journey play as a member of the Babies.
Right.
I just sort of capsulized that in my mind. I sort of mentally photographed that feeling. What would they want to hear? What would they want to hear from Journey and Steve Perry and Neil Schon and Ross Valerie and Steve Smith? And so when I went into the studio, I kind of synthesized them in my brain, and I was writing with Steve. I thought, what would a Journey fan want to hear? They'd want to hear just a small town girl living in a lonely world.
Mm-hmm.
Took the midnight train going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they want to hear. And so it's always been the fans driving the music for Journey. And the hardest thing, I think, for us to make a record, to go in the studio, is to get that right in our heads, to synthesize. Imagine ourselves standing on stage before 10,000 people, playing a song for the first time, a new song. And that was my inspiration, pretty much.
That's great. John, when the reader has, read the last page, turned the cover, shut the book, what's your hope for them? What is like that one or two big takeaways that you hope that they'll come away with?
Well, the first one is you're not always who they say you are. Don't let anybody judge you and tell you it's not possible, because you're unique. God made you uniquely you, And for me, my father and I had this vision, and nothing was going to stop it. And you just have to relocate, be patient for your season, continue. I hope it inspires anybody that has a dream. I hope that it shows that life happens in the middle. You know, that just because you made your first million doesn't mean you've made it.
That's
That
good.
there's always going to be, you know, instances where life happens, and then you have to deal with it. And the decisions you make and the choices you make will land you where you're supposed to be. And in my case, you know, I was able to escape some pretty crazy things that came for me, came marching for me, and yet I think by the grace of God, I was able to escape, which was the name of my first album with Journey,
Right.
ironically, Escape.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so all of our Facebook Live fans, it might be nice if you would play for us. You actually composed a song specifically for the book. Let's maybe play that.
Yeah, well, I gave an interview in Nashville about the creation of the book and my life, and I look back on it, you know, as a songwriter, and I was driving back to Florida, and the Lord just gave me this song, so here it is. It's called The Songs You Leave Behind.
No one sees the countless hours you spend, songs that disappoint you in the end, and few have felt rejection you've endured. No one knows the battles you have won, no one's faced the battles you have won, where a melody is lost without the words. As you wait on the spotlight, you've come for the big night, applause you'll never show that you deserve. Can't bear to see your star fading, always got something new waiting. Failure's just a word you never learn. And when it's time to leave the dance, be sure you know the signs, you'll be remembered for the songs you leave behind. It's the songs you leave behind. When the road becomes your mistress, the months, the weeks, the days you've missed, friends and love you've lost out on the road. Every victory has a price to pay, stealing moments of your life away. While you shine, there is no other way to go. As you wait on the spotlight, you come for the big night, applause you'll never show that you deserve. Can't bear to see your star fading, I keep them all anticipating. Failure's just a word you never learn. When it's time to leave the dance, be sure you know the signs, you'll be remembered. You'll be remembered for the songs you leave behind. It's the songs you leave behind.
Powerful lyrics, such a beautiful song, and actually that's the last few pages in the book. Those lyrics for that
I
complete
wanted
song.
to leave
They're
the
printed
listener.
there.
Yeah, I want to leave the listener with a takeaway for me. And you know, as a writer of songs and being in the Hall of Fame, there's a legacy that goes with that. And you know, I want my kids to remember. And for anybody else that wants to make an impact with their music, that I think any one of us wants to leave something to be remembered by. And so it was a blessing to have that song come to me.
That's good.
Thank you.
Gary on Facebook Live asked, do you think Journey would have been as popular if they came out today?
Today?
Yes.
Well, I think Don't Stop Believin' would have definitely hit the charts. There's no way. And I think Faithfully and Open Arms, I think all of our hits would have had some impact out there. Yeah, I think so.
That's good. I think we're going to be close to wrapping up. It would be nice to know or to also hear you play, a little bit more. I know that people, as I'm scrolling through the Facebook live feed, they're just really loving the fact that you're playing some for us. I'll ask one more question. I think this is a good question from Angela. What was the hardest part of the book to write when you were looking back at your journey? What was maybe the most emotional part of remembering and writing down?
I think it was the fire.
Sure.
There were times when I just wept.
Sure. Right.
But that's the story. And, being a survivor of that fire and probably one of the only people to ever tell that tale,
Right.
I felt a great responsibility to get it right, to get that story right. And just the thought of that day was difficult. And but yet I felt like there was a catharsis that came through me. I felt a healing as I got through it. I understood it better. I understood that God was there that day, that those kids were messengers. That what really hit me was that those kids served to change the fire laws for schools around the world, and that those 92 children that perished meant something to the world.
Right.
Their lives helped save other lives, so something that tragic would never happen again. Amen.
That's good. Well, the book is just jam-packed with so many stories about Steve Perry and just, how Journey discovered you and your time with the Babies and growing up in Chicago and struggling as a musician in Hollywood with your brother Tommy. And
the problem. Well, and then the rub-in with greatness was always interesting. The way the Lord would always put me next to these great people, and in great situations, like foreshadowing. Can you handle it?
Yeah.
Do you see the greatness here? Like there was an American Graffiti cast party that Wolfman Jack, of course, his management company was managing me, which was just came out of the blue. I don't know where that came from, but somebody from his company came out to see us perform and heard about my songwriting, and they invited me to Los Angeles to start a career. I mean, are you kidding me? That just fell in my lap,
Right.
And then here's Wolfman, and he's this big star already, Midnight Special, and I sit in a room with Harrison Ford, George Lucas, Suzanne Summers, things like that are just very, when I look back on it, like the Lord was always saying, okay, here's what greatness looks like, but it's not your turn yet.
Yeah, that's great.
So get ready, you know.
That's great. Well, Jonathan, thank you for taking time out of your day. We're here in New
pleasure.
York. John's on a book tour. If you go to dsbbook.com, you'll see where he's going to be over the next week and a half as far as different cities, Orlando, Nashville, Chicago, Houston, LA, Las Vegas, and tonight in New Jersey at Bookends. So why don't you play as we're closing out here?
Highway run into the midnight sun. Wheels going around, you're on my mind. Restless hearts sleep alone tonight, settling on my love along the wire. You say that the road ain't no place to sort of found. Right down the line just been you and me. Loving a music man ain't always what it's supposed to be. Oh girl, you stand by me, I'm forever yours. Faithfully. Thank you.